it's time for our first conversation, and we're going to be talking about autism. As Renata mentioned, April is commemorated as Autism Awareness Month. And right now, we're going to be having a conversation with psychologist Deshane Lopez about what autism is, how do children go about getting diagnosed, and how can parents or all family relatives live and interact with persons that are autistic. Deshane is joining us via Zoom. Deshane, good morning. How are you doing today? You have to unmute
I think
your mic.
you're muted.
All right. Better?
Yes, much better.
perfecto.
Much better. It's good to see you this morning. I mean, like I was telling Renata, we've worked in the past before when you were working at CRD with the whole support services for persons living with HIV. So I'm proud of you and, seeing you thrive as a psychologist and, of course, giving your services to the people. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you. How are you feeling? I did not get that from you.
It's a good morning. I feel good. It's good to be able to be talking to you guys. I know I'm usually in person, but I'm glad that we have Zoom to be able to accommodate today.
Definitely.
Yes, because I was going to say, are you supposed to dance or something? That's why you're on Zoom today?
Maybe.
I danced the last time.
Okay, you get way. You get way. All right. So, Deshane, this is a really important conversation I think people need to have, especially from the counselor perspective, where there are a lot of parents that struggle to not understand, what their child is going through when it comes to autism. And so people don't know what autism is really when you think about it. And so could you just give a general idea of, what autism really is when it comes to the psychological aspect of, how it affects a child?
Okay. So autism is a neurological and developmental disorder that affects communication. It have a lot of repetitive behavior, and so it affects how the child interact with their parents, with their loved ones, and how they explore and experience the world. And so typically from about 12 months to 18 months, you can start to see signs in terms of how your child is interacting and connecting with you as a parent. So as early as 18 months, you could get your child diagnosed once you're starting to see some of the signs.
What are these signs that people should be looking at, like parents should be looking out for their child?
Okay, so what the early signs when your child is about 12 months to 18 months, you want to be able to see how the child is responding to you. So typically, the child, because it's solely dependent on their parent, they're trying to be connection with their parents in terms of when their mom or their dad is talking to them, they'll be able to respond, they'll be able to interact, giving baby talks and engaging with the parents and consoling with them. But when a child is already displaying symptoms, they may not be as responsive. There are some children that are able to still have some interaction and it doesn't really cause an alarm for parents. But typically by the time they reach 18 months and they're starting to walk and interact, that's where we usually start to see some of the social skills coming out. And that's where a lot of times parents start to notice, well, the way my child is playing and interacting isn't compared to their other children, or they're noticing that their child has delays. So those are usually the first sign. If the child isn't meeting their developmental milestones, so they may have speech delay, they may have in terms of their vocabulary may not be as developed in terms of responding to their name when their parents call them or try to give their attention. They don't interact, so they probably would play by themselves. They won't engage in cooperative play. Now, cooperative play is when you have a toy, for example, and you're sharing it with the baby and you're saying, here, Papa, or here, Mama, and they're not responding to you any at all. And it's not because they're playing with something else, but even when you're trying to get their attention, they're not responding. So they have limited response and engagement when you're trying to engage with them. They may play with toys in a very peculiar way compared to how the toys is designed for. They maybe find the most interesting part of a toy that is will have their focus. Some child may like spinning. Even their fine motor abilities may also be a challenge. So those are the areas that typically parents start to look for initially. So whenever we're doing screening or before a parent comes in, these are the things that they would start to notice, that they would say, okay, I think there is some delay that my child is experiencing, and they want to be able to find out more.
I love that. Thank you for that because I've interacted with some parents and they've said, "Oh, my child is just taking long to develop, or he's just different." But
Yeah.
I've heard it from a point also that they're scared to know, "Oh, my child is autistic," given that there's like many stigmas as it relates to mental health and a child's development. So at what point is like the opportune time for a parent to take their child and be like, my child is going through these things. Can you help me out here to understand him better? Is there like an age like specific when they should go to see you, for instance?
I like to recommend 18 months to
Okay.
24 months. So a year and change to 2 years is really a good time because we could start intervention early. I know as parents, it's hard to even think that your child may have some developmental delay. I think that's where for parents, we don't want to admit or we don't want to think about our child may need more than what we are able to give them. And so that I guess that's where some of the fear comes in terms of do I really want to take my child?
Right.
And even though it would be beneficial, that where no one wants to hear that, right? But what I like to tell parents is the earlier you know, it's better for you and the child because then the child will be able to get the support that they need to be able to function in life, you know. And I think that's what parents want. They want to know that their child will be able to function if they are no longer there. And so if we think about our child has a disorder or a disability, our thing is, well, how will my child survive? And that's where the fear comes in. But if we get early identification, early intervention, it helps increase the functionality of that child, that they may still be able to get the support that they need early. And then you want to know what level of support that your child will need. So autism has 3 different levels. There is level 1. That is where the child cognitive abilities may be average or above average. Their social skills are there, but they still have some deficits. And so for them, they're still able to function just as a typical child who does not have autism and they may need minimal support. Then there's level 2. The child may have more challenges in terms of social communication and more repetitive behavior, and they may need additional support. And then there's level 3, where the child has severe challenges and typically with probably cognitive difficulties, adaptive skills, and so they may need a lot more support. So the more you know about your child, the better it is in terms of understanding what services you need to be able to get to help your child be able to adapt in society, to live a life where they can live their best life, and whatever that best life would look like, you could start to plan ahead. Because whenever we are pregnant, that's what we start to do. We start to plan in terms of what will be my child life like, what will I do, what plans I have for my child, and all of these things. Now, when you're starting to see signs that you're saying, okay, my child development isn't going through the normal, typical trajectory, this could also give you that same opportunity to make those plans. It may be different from what you had originally when you were pregnant, but it will still give you an upper hand in terms of these are the things that you need to get done for your child.
Wow, I am blown. I did not know there was like 3 levels of like development or like.
I knew that there were
Way
different
how they
levels
would
because one of
manifest.
my cousins, he has an autistic son, and I saw her take a lot of, I believe he's at level 2, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
But on that note, moving a little bit away from the children and on to now the parents, Deshane, tell us a little bit about, a parent just finding out that their child is maybe a level 2, level 3, and they feel like the world has ended for them. What are ways in which a parent can be able to understand, I can cope with this situation, it's totally fine that my child is autistic. What is the way they should be able to, I know they have to react in whichever way they have to react because people are supposed to feel their emotions. But what then after when they're finished with feeling their emotions, how can they be able to go on afterwards?
I think one of the main things is trying to get support because when you have a family member that is autistic, it really affects the entire family. Like I said, it affects the plans that the family may have. Now, when your child is at a level 2 or level 3, that comes with more financial burden for the family, because that means that the child requires more services. And then more services also mean different types of professional working together. And depending on what is it that the child needs, they may need more of that within a week. So that comes with an additional cost. So one, getting support. So Autism Belize is a great place for you guys, where I believe they have on Saturdays parent meetings whereby as parents they come together to be able to support each other. Now, again, in terms of level 2 and level 3, depending on what your child may need, some of the common things that a child may need in level 2 and level 3 are like speech therapy, occupational therapy, ABA therapy, as well as if there's any other medical conditions. And some children may also experience depression and anxiety as well. So knowing the levels will tell you more or less specifically what would be the areas. And then you want to be able to know what are our priorities, what will be the first thing that we want to be able to meet. So we've had some children that have been at level 2 and now are functioning better at level 1 because they've had over a year or 2 years of ABA therapy. And that has also helped with speech. We have referred to speech therapists. We don't currently have any occupational therapists that I'm aware of in country. But those are services that parents would need to be able to consider. I know there have been some parents that talk about how they start to do their own research in terms of how they could start to provide some of those services or some of the activities based to be able to learn. So, for example, I can speak about ABA because our office also provides ABA services by Mr. Jeremy Vargas. And what he really does is to be able to teach the children skills as well as the parents so that the parents is able to help that child. Because we know that doing therapy alone won't be sufficient given the amount of hours. And because we also know that cost is a factor, we teach parents, so we have parent training as a part of our package. So the child is learning as well as the parent so that they learn strategies that they're able to cope. And I also always recommend that parents themselves, if they need additional in terms of therapy, because in terms of depression and anxiety and just that level of overwhelm, they also seek their mental health services, because for them to be able to continuously be there for their child, they have to be able to be at a place where they can
be supportive,
be present.
Yeah,
right?
Be present. Yeah.
And so taking care of yourself as a parent, I know it's really hard because sometimes the question is, well, who do I leave my child with? And the care that you want, you know that you as a parent can give it. But I like the example that have always been given about when you're in an airplane and the first thing that they tell you is to put on your mask first. Then help your child and help other people, because if you don't take care of yourself, you may not survive long enough to take care of anyone else. And so it really is it really is difficult, but it's trying to get as much as possible your family support or outside support to help you to at least get some breaks in between, because it can be overwhelming, it could be exhausting, and also it could also be a financial burden. So trying to find support system using the services that the country do have to get that level of support could also be beneficial. And like I said, Autism Belize do also have a parent support group as well.
Wow, thank you for giving us that awareness about where can parents go to for support, because as you rightly mentioned, you need to be in a good place yourself for you to be able to help your child. So Autism Belize, as you rightly mentioned, is a place where people can go for support. And there's your counseling services as well, where people can reach out as well, parents and child, to being able to, one, get diagnosed or evaluated to see if your child is autistic, provide further therapy that they may need, and also what the parent may need as well. I'm thinking, for parents that already know that their child is autistic, let's do a level 1 child, because I mean, that can often get not like that, like misplaced, but people would be like, oh, my child is just developing late, when rather the child might be at autistic level 1. Is there like any practical things that maybe you can, like tips that you can give the parent on how can they can interact with their child and be that support?
Well, you said 2 interesting things just now, Kevin. You talked about maybe just in terms of developmentally delayed. Now, not because your child is developmentally delayed mean that they're autistic.
Thanks for that. Thank you for that.
Yeah. That they get screened and diagnosed early because it could be intellectual disability.
Okay.
It could be global delay disorder as well, and it could be autism. So you want to be able to know what really is it, rather than just saying, "Oh, he or she's just a little bit
Deshane, that's why you're the right person to have this.
I was just gonna be like, wait, Deshane, first, what is global delay disorder? Because like you just throw out a whole disorder. I was like,
Yes,
that?
I'm like,
can you please just quickly explain that to us too? Because I think it's important now that people are understanding, like, just because your child is a bit, delayed, a little bit slower in certain things,
Yeah.
not learning the numbers as quick as you want it or whatever it is,
I am
that does
here.
not mean your child is
Yeah.
autistic. But there are other disorders. Please enlighten us.
Yeah. So global developmental disorder is pretty much the early disorder for intellectual disability, and generally the child is not meeting their milestones in most of the areas, or in particularly maybe it's not just the physical delay, but in terms of their intelligence, language as well. So they could have an overall delay profile, and they may not have the social component. So remember, we talk about autism is also a social communication. So for
Right.
example, while we're looking for cooperative play, the child is playing with you and engaging and all that. A child that may have global developmental disorder may be able to play and interact and engage, just that in terms of where they're supposed to be, they're not at their right age. So they still have the social communication isn't an issue. They do not require they not do repetitive behavior, and they do not require a schedule or a routine to keep them and not having meltdowns, etc. So those are some of the, you try to be able to identify, is it really autism, is it developmental delay? So the global developmental delay, like I said, is usually between 1 to 5, and usually that is like the early stage for a person who may say at that later age, if they don't have intervention, etc., they may have intellectual disability, which is where their ability to adapt and to process information and have that reasoning skills is low, and so they may also need additional support as well.
wow, thank you, Deshane. Like this conversation has been really enlightening for me because
Wow.
as much as I would hear autism being bounced around, just hearing what you have shared with us really has opened up my mind about the many ways how it manifests itself and how it affects children and parents. So I'm thinking, for the parents that have heard this conversation and they want to tap into evaluating their child, can you let us know where they can access your services?
So our office is located at 2A South Park Street in Belize City. And so they could call us at 636-0823. They can go also on our Facebook page at Counseling and Psychological Services. And even if you just type it in Google, we should pop
It's gonna show up.
Counseling and Psychological Services.
Great, Deshane. Thank you so much for today and for this conversation.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. I think you really went spot on, enlightening people about things they didn't know. And also, I think a positive message that I'm hoping parents would get from this is that there is support out there. There are ways that we can be able to cope and get through these things. We need to monitor our children, really evaluate what's happening with them. Don't just think, oh, this is just that, I'll leave it as is. Put that real interest and time and effort into testing your child, and then also seeing how you can be able to support, but also support yourself too as well. And know that you can't pour out of our empty cup. You have to be able to nourish yourself before you can be able to feed into your child. So take care of yourself. And I know the road sometimes feels very frustrating, but access services if you need to invest in it, because maybe they said it's too expensive, I can't afford it. But when you're really doing the opportunity cost of your mental health, like draining, burnout, just over everything, as compared to just spending this money to try to see if you can be able to just keep going and finding the necessary coping skills, you have to wait out and see what you really need to be able to better yourself and your family. So we just want to thank you so much, Deshane, for being here and for giving us all this good scoop on what we need to know. And so we take a lot of it with us, and we'll be able to see if we can apply that and have our friends apply and also as well.
Right.
So with that, we go to our next commercial break.